Hey everybody, I'm Matt Hill. I'm with Night Energy Services,
This is Ken Lavin with Winter Mud.
Jeremiah Smith, Trace Management.
and we have a distinguished guest in the house today. Everybody, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Mike Cantrell, and I'm an oil and gas producer and also run a public affairs, government affairs consulting group.
Well,
I think you do some speaking engagements too. You do quite a
do.
bit. Yeah, I think
I,
you're
I have a
underselling it.
long list of the amazing accomplishments this guy's had. Well, this is our show. Mike, thank you for coming. This is the Talking Energy Show. We were talking before how we got started. A little bit had to do with boredom. I mean, Ken and I wanted to do something, positive for the industry. And man, I just like, I talked to you on the phone earlier. Guys like you do lots of things, and it's kind of selfish, but I just want to meet you myself and put you, and record you.
Right.
Yeah, I'm happy to make the connection with you guys. I love connecting. In fact, I've written a book, and I've got a chapter on relational networking.
That's what I want to talk
And
about, your
what
book.
that's about is not just networking, not just going to events where you hand out business cards, but you pick out people that you want to get close to, and you make friends.
Friends, true friends.
True friends.
Exactly.
Relationships.
Yeah, you make money off friends, not
And
off
where
your
I got
enemies,
that,
right?
where I
Yeah.
really got that was when I was about 16. Went in to buy my first set of tires at Ed Manasco Tire and Supply at 8 o'clock. I've been there with my dad since I was walking.
Yeah.
And so I go into Ed's to buy my first set of tires, and he comes out, says hello. And he was my uncle was married to his daughter, so we had kind of a connection. And so anyway, I tell Ed, I said, Ed, I need to buy some tires. And he said, well, I'll give you a grandpa deal. Come on in. And I said, well, I want to buy the tires, but I don't want a special deal. I want you to charge me what you charge everybody else. How naive is that? And he gave me he said, son, let me give you your first lesson in business. You never make money off your enemies. You make money off your friends. And so he said, don't worry about old Uncle Ed. He'll get by just fine.
Man, that's funny.
That's awesome.
You're,
So you just need more friends.
Yeah,
you
and then
inspired
true
our term
network,
we've been using, tossed around, friendstomers. Good friends, good customers, friendstomers.
That's a good one.
What's the name of that book that you wrote?
The book
you
that I
wrote a
wrote
book.
is called Advance, How to Take Your Life, Your Business, and Your Brand to the Highest Level.
Nice.
So it's got some things in it that might be useful and some things probably aren't. But
What do you think is useful in it?
well, actually, I think that the chapter on parenting, which is unusual for a book like that, is probably very good. The first chapter or two talks about finding out who it is that you are, not what you are, not what you've done, not your conditioning or belief system that you've been taught, but actually finding that kernel of uniqueness in yourself that says, who am I? And once you can answer that, then you got two other questions. One is, what am I to do? What am I to do? And once you figure that out, you say, who am I to do it with? So you build parameters around those three things, and that's the foundation, I think, for everything else.
I was going to say, great analogy is the formation by far.
How many kids do you have?
I have two, and biggest accomplishment in my life, and of course I take the credit, but my wife probably deserves 75% of it. And they're both in business for themselves. Both went to private schools, got great educations. Both wanted to go in business for themselves, never wanted to work for anybody else, although they did while they were in college. And they've both been very successful. My son turns 40 in July, and my daughter is 43, which is hard to believe, but they're both doing well in their businesses. And they came back to Ada, Oklahoma, and wanted to raise their families in a small town, which kind of surprised me.
Yeah.
Because they've been all over the world and they've seen everything, seen a lot, and more than I have even. So I was surprised by that, but it's kind of cool. I mean, we live 200 yards from my granddaughter, from my daughter and grandchildren.
Okay.
And we live about 5 miles from my son. He had to get a little bit further away from Dad than she did.
I think that's normal with any dad and son, for
I
sure.
promise you it is. The kiss of Dad with anybody that wants to get to do business with my son is to go through me.
Ah, there you go.
Are they in oil and gas?
My son is. In fact, they both took a snippet of my businesses. And I've had a dual track career. I mean, somewhere around the age of 30, I learned that there's a direct correlation between good government policies and my bottom line. So somewhere in that, well, it was where I really got on it was 1989, was when I really kind of started in that direction. And then I formed Mike Cantrell and Associates to do political fundraising and campaign consulting and public affairs to an extent. It took me a lot longer to learn more about public affairs, although I was the first chairman of the Oklahoma Energy Resources Board, and we spend half our budget basically on promoting the industry one way or the other, and that taught me an awful lot going through that process.
While you're here, since you ran that position, what for those that are listening that aren't in oil and gas, what is the Oklahoma Energy Resources Board? We're big fans, but what do they do?
basically Pete Brown, who's an oil man in Oklahoma City, and I were kind of the co-founders. We tried to do a national program. We were thinking about checkoff, just basically where we could promote the industry with funds from the industry. And you can't do it voluntarily. People just won't voluntarily give enough money. So we created an assessment, much like the beef checkoff, where everybody gives 0.2% from their oil and gas revenues that go directly into the treasurer's office in an account for us. We're not a state agency. We're not governed by anybody except a board. And so the mission was to change the image of Oklahoma oil and gas producers and the industry. So number one, we represent all the industry at OARB. We don't let our different squabbles or differences get involved in that. And early on, I made that decision as chairman. We're going to leave those issues at the door. When we come in here, we're supporting everything from the royalty owner to the refiner to the end user. We're supporting the entire industry. And so we decided it's kind of interesting. It was born out of necessity. Probably the best part of the program is the environmental cleanup piece, which is half the revenues by statute are go into environmental cleanup of abandoned oil and gas.
Which has been huge.
Yeah, which has been a great thing. And the reason, it's kind of funny, the reason we did that was not totally altruistic. The reason we did it was our image was so bad that we had to give the voters and the public a visual of our industry. Rather than telling them, we had to show them our goodwill. And so by cleaning up those damaged sites, that's been our public education message forever. And I hope they still got things running on cleaning up the environment, because that's
those commercials are amazing.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Jeremiah?
Well, there's a lot of wells that need P&A still in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious. When you're
How
bringing
many?
Well over 1,000. I mean,
4,500 is the last thing I
well
saw.
over.
Yeah, and I think that's
4,500 wells that need to be.
Yeah, and they're abandoned.
orphaned.
Yeah,
totally
orphan wells.
Yeah, so you don't have any operator responsible to do it. So now,
Do you know how many nationwide there are?
No, but I'm going to know, because there's 2 bills in Congress that will address that.
Okay.
One is a bipartisan bill, and the co-sponsor is my friend Kevin Kramer, senator from North Dakota. And Kevin is as far right as they get. So, if he's for it, it's going to be good for the industry.
So if we have 4,500 in Oklahoma, if you just add that to all of the basins in the plays, I mean,
Texas has got to have 4 times that.
Yeah.
And Texas actually has a pretty good program.
got
Mike,
a
why
better-
don't we have that program? When does that come?
I'll tell you what it is. And let me finish telling you.
Real quick though, the program. Texas, their non-productive wells, they're forced to plug 10% a year of their non-productive wells.
But
We don't have any policy here.
they're only maintaining status quo. They're not dipping. They're not plugging ones and going on a curve where they're going down in the number of wells that need to be plugged.
Yeah.
And they've got a great plugging fund. They got part of their tax goes straight into plugging fund.
true. But I like your take that you told us the other day at the Mike came on graciously to talk to us at the Oilfield Connections, and your take on those wells that some people say need to be plugged. You had a little bit different take on, well, maybe the evaluation process needs to be changed.
Well, I helped get a statute passed 20 years ago that basically forbids you from plugging a well on an otherwise producing lease.
That's right.
And the idea was that these wells, we need to quit looking at these as liabilities, because they're really assets, potential assets. And think about horizontal drilling. Think about all the technology that we can use now on old wells that we couldn't use before. And why wouldn't we have a review process of some kind? Why would we just go wholesale saying it's a good thing to plug wells? Not necessarily a good thing, but if you draw the line at those that already have a producing well on them, the zones are productive. So you've got something to work with. And so I think that's a good law. And frankly, the Corporation Commission hasn't always just followed that. They try to make you plug things that are sometimes not.
Because even if you double it, it's better than what it is now.
Yeah.
What's
right.
the line in the sand on what they consider producing? One
Well,
barrel a day?
No, there is no line in the
As
sand.
long as you're bringing hydrocarbons to
I
the
would say
surface.
that
Any level.
and it's not the commission's decision to make, and they've been doing that some. But it's not their decision to make on a civil matter, like when your oil and gas lease runs out. It runs out at the cessation of commercial production.
Right.
And so who's to say what that is? Well, there's case law all over the boards on that. And so basically,
If you're bringing water to the surface nowadays, you can clean up the water and it can be utilized. So who's to say?
and there's so much to talk about. We need NPDES permitting so that we can discharge water into streams as long as it's that's available.
I don't know. That
The
seems
EPA
like
is
it's getting
not
taken
gonna-
advantage of, though,
Yeah.
for discharging like that. What are they going to be pumping in these
It'd have to be.
streams?
That'd be
Well,
very
look
regulated.
at what Gianni is doing. He's the only person in Oklahoma right now, committed water. Look it up. It's pretty cool. But they can take produce water this black, and it comes out cleaner than drinking water. So
there's a lot of
There's a lot of
technologies that
technology.
do that, and when I was at Continental doing government and regulatory affairs, they would all come to me.
yeah, you worked with Harold,
So,
man,
yeah.
friends for a long time. Yeah.
So-
I had some questions on that too when we get there. I actually met with the DEQ last week to discuss that and the regulations around how we can discharge cleaned up water, right? And not necessarily potable or drinkable, but clean enough to where you're getting rid of the real hazardous chemicals, and you can spray it on roads or on grass
Or crops.
Yeah.
Put it in the round.
I think it's not going to be publicly acceptable to probably discharge straight into a stream or river, although that's
Never.
the nature
That's
of
the narrative
NPDES
we were
program.
talking about
And if
again.
you think about it, when we take all this fresh water that we accumulate, millions of barrels to frack these big horizontal frack jobs,
Absolutely.
we lose that forever.
Yeah.
But if you were recycling that water and you're able to discharge it back into the environment, it could actually be an environmentally sound method.
benefit. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and water loss is a huge problem. I actually read an article yesterday, somewhat unrelated, but in Las Vegas, that dam, the Mead, I think it's Lake Mead.
Lake Mead.
Yep.
Yeah,
Lake Mead.
It's down 37%.
Right.
They are already too low on water this year. Like, it is crazy.
They've
Water
been
is
going
a
down for
resource.
years.
It's the future. But real quick, got to go back because we kind of deviated. But how does a well become orphaned? What happens? Like,
I'd say mostly
Chain
it
of
becomes
title.
economically not viable.
okay.
And so now that's different things for Sun or Texaco or Phillips or ExxonMobil or some of those. That level is pretty high. But for somebody like us, we operate the lowest of the lowest production wells. My son's average production is about 2 barrels a day on 300 wells.
Yeah.
Which is
So-
amazing, though.
Yeah,
It's perfect. For
Yeah, he
a
makes
small
money
operator.
with that, and we can make money with that as long as we have reasonable regulation, as long as we have some sort of a price that's reasonable.
Man, I'll take a couple of wells that are making 5 barrels a
Oh
day.
yeah. Well, as long as you got a reasonable operator too. That Copus is great, but if the well is drilled in 65 or something like that, Copus now has the operating overhead. It could be over $2,000 a day. That kills the viability of a lot of wells. It's quite frustrating.
When I was a young man, one of the people I worked with was Benny Pearl Prentice in Allen, Oklahoma. I think Benny died this year, but anyway, he always said, "I don't want a 100 barrel a day oil well. I just want 100 1 barrel."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, it's a source of income. But how does it become orphaned? Like, where the chain of title is lost, where you no longer have an owner of that well, such as it typically is BP or whoever's going to sell it to the next guy, the next guy, the next guy, right? So it's
Finally, the
marginal.
next guy runs out.
You're right. Yeah, he just
There's
goes bankrupt, or what? How do they become orphaned?
Well, they
Does the
become
landowner
orphaned
call in
because
and say, "Hey, I've got
nobody's-
this well on my
nobody's
property"?
in charge of them. Nobody's taking care
Yeah,
of them.
but there's a chain of title, right? A 1072A with the OCC that says you own that well on that location and that legal description. So how does it become?
Well, I'm going to
orphaned?
give you my impression, and I'm always direct. There is a cottage industry practice of people that when they get to that point, they put them in an LLC and bankrupt.
Yeah, yeah.
Then you're done.
Okay.
Yeah.
That some way we need to address that. And I was saying there's 2 bills in Congress that are best address orphan wells. One of them just gives $10 billion over 8 states, of which we would be one of the 8 states if we qualify. My sense is Democrats are going to make us tie that to tighten surety requirements.
Nothing like a big giant lump
okay.
sum for the government to another government
that- and it-
entity to waste money.
is-
That sounds
Interesting.
like moral hazard, by the way.
Yeah.
Moral
Well, it's
hazard.
not. It's not.
Tell me how it is.
The
If you
premise
know
of
that
it
someone
is
will pay for
it
it.
will not pass. It will not pass unless they give states control of their own program.
There we go. And you talked about that in that in talk you gave.
That's
is
a
we
great
have
point.
guys like Langford and Inhofe that one senator
One senator can put a hold on a bill.
Yeah.
can
Yep.
fix our problems pretty quickly.
My favorite quote that probably is, if I learned one thing out of a 45-year career in public affairs and political activity, it is Mark Twain's quote. I've known many problems in my life. Most of them never happened.
Yeah.
So we see all these things that are like Joe Biden is the death knell of the industry. Well, I got to tell you something, guys. We're doing pretty good on
Yeah, and we do on every Democrat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
Historically, I used to say this, that historically we've done better under Democrat administrations, none of which I ever voted for,
Yeah.
than we have under Republican administrations, except for Jimmy Carter. And I've had to go back
Allegedly, everything in this podcast studio.
on that. Yeah.
We don't want to put
So
that.
Jimmy
we
Carter,
do not
go
want to
ahead,
put
go
that
ahead.
out
You're
there.
telling me 78? And we ever since then we've done better under Democrats.
Yes.
Wow.
yeah.
Even Obama.
That blows
I'm
my
gonna-
mind. Obama.
I'm going to
All the
ask
things
that you
Obama
put
threatened to
parameters
do,
around
he
that.
didn't get done.
Well, did he threaten that, or was it like everyone used that as attacking him to take away jobs and stuff? What was it? Was Obama saying it, or was it just the
Well, there was definitely a tightening of the
humanizing.
regulatory
Yeah.
regime
Oh,
yeah.
that he tried to do. But
Water, that's where he was
in
getting
8
us.
Well,
years,
and methane emissions.
8
which need to
years, he
happen.
didn't get that into the law.
Well,
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
It's hard to pass laws.
It
Since
is.
we're on
And-
water, that is also like something that's that's how they're going to get us, man. They can stop us on
Water is
regulatory,
the
but
issue.
water's our issue.
I remember when the fracking, anti-fracking narrative hit 10 years ago or so. I was asked at Continental to tell us what our biggest problems are, and I said water, the amount of water we use, and what we do with it, and what happens as a result. And that's
right.
been true. We've had earthquakes because of disposal operations. Although I think the commission's done a really good job of if not stopping that, almost stopping it.
Yeah.
And so I think water is the key issue facing the oil and gas industry going forward.
it was when Obama got
You could
in
probably
there.
argue the world. Or
Do you
is
think-
the United
It ought to be
States.
for us. We shouldn't let them capture that message.
Yep.
Yeah.
We should own that narrative as an industry.
That's where I was just about to go. I was going to go back to how to promote our industry and get it going again, and we could definitely use the water as
We came up with the technology
Yes.
and the infrastructure.
But yeah, I think it'd be a good vehicle to move forward using the water, and that's what I was going to come back to. Moving forward with our industry, what is something that you see that we can be able to promote our industry? I know you mentioned it back in the 70s and the 80s, but you guys too, y'all can jump in on this too. Do you see that our industry definitely needs that positive spin for sure moving forward because with all the EVs and everything that we've talked about in the past and things like that, that we definitely need something to promote us going forward.
When I was president of the Oklahoma Energy Producers Alliance, which I was the first chairman and then the first president and was one of the co-founders of that, I advocated conservation practices, good conservation practices. We're one of the few major states that doesn't have a permitting process for hydraulic frac jobs. Texas has an area of review where you've got to go in and prove you're not going to hit unplugged wells or badly plugged wells. And we've not come to grips with that in Oklahoma. We're the most pro-industry state regulatory-wise, which is both a blessing and a curse. The blessing is it's great to do business here because your regulatory costs are nothing like they are anywhere else. The curse is that if you get a strong EPA, they might take over primacy. We've got primacy under underground injection control at the Corporation Commission. We were the first state to get that primacy to where we could regulate our own program. Now, most of the other states do it now, but I worry about losing that primacy if we don't do a good job. Permitting 14 shallow wells to handle the water that was coming from the Arbuckle that created the purge in Kingfisher County that's still purging to the surface now, that's the kind of thing that scares me to death and would keep me awake at night if I had major assets.
How many wells are around that purge that are not able to produce now? They they turn all of the producing wells.
Well,
didn't
can we
turn
go
it
back
all
a step?
Yeah.
Tell us what the purge is, and then please do answer Matt's question if you haven't answered
I have a
that.
bunch
But
of
what
questions.
happened with
Everybody
the purge?
listen. Also,
Yeah.
tell us about. Hey, so everybody also is the OEPA, Oklahoma Energy Producers Alliance. So we have a couple groups here in the state that are advocates for oil and gas.
We've got
what is that?
We
What's
had
the
17
OEPA?
board members of the Oklahoma Independent Petroleum Association, which is no more.
Right.
Basically split off. We're a splinter group. We just kind of like the guys that formed the nation. We're a splinter group. We're a
Why?
splinter group.
There you go.
And we basically were formed to basically represent the interest of vertical conventional well producers. Because the OIPA had gotten so heavily horizontal in their leadership that we weren't even able to get compromises done.
Yeah.
So when that didn't work, in fact, ironically, Harold and I had a compromise that we were on the fracking of wells that we were in favor of, that I thought we could get the group to go along with. And my group said they were going along with it. We got into the board to vote, and I had 4 or 5 of my members go the other way.
No.
And so we lost that compromise. And if we'd had that, there wouldn't have been any OEPA, at least not this early.
Yeah.
But anyway, and so
Well,
that's
Harold,
kinda-
thank you for trying it.
Yeah, I mean, Harold's always willing to try to work with
Yeah.
small producers, always has been. And
Well, especially you. I mean,
well, my intuition is that he is not a big part of this problem of fracking into others' wells, because I think he tries to go out and buy the smaller producers first.
Right.
Yeah,
may
frac
not
bashing
always
is
do
a
that,
real
but-
concern, though. It really is.
What is?
Frac bashing. What you're
Oh.
referring to. Yeah,
Guys,
it kills the small
I had to
guys.
quit saying it because it exceeded the bounds of believability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we've lost thousands of vertical wells, thousands to horizontal frac jobs. And for some reason, 95% of them don't come back.
Yeah.
Some do. Some get improved. Some get a big boost from that frac job. Why all of them don't get that, I don't know. But It just waters them out and they're done.
Have you found a solution? You know, some guys will shut them in, some will leave them going, some will pump down.
I don't believe there is a solution to that. I think everything brings another consequence.
Yeah.
Well, bring it back to what you were talking about on the purge.
What is the purge? Tell us. I don't know if we want to get into detail about that.
Yeah, you probably don't.
Take this. I mean, I don't know.
No, we should talk about it. I mean, listen, we are very open on our show. Is that, hey, look, sometimes things happen. I mean, we've had spills, we've had rigs burned down, we've had loss of life. I mean, there are things in our industry that we all, in groups like this, can work, together to fix for the future generations. And, the leaders of our industry have ideas and wisdom.
Well, my idea on what caused the purge is that, you've got the commission's effort to eliminate earthquakes from disposal into the Arbuckle.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result, they started permitting shallower disposal wells to handle the same amount of water. Mm-hmm. Well, you're putting too much water into 14 shallow wells, and it's on that balloon's going to burst at some point. So we did have a breakout of that to the surface, to where you had, I forget what the total was. It was several barrels a minute coming out of the top of the ground, running down the ditch. And the solution to it, I think, and I have advocated this, and I know some of our testimony at the commission has advocated it. The solution of it is, number one, shut those 14 wells down.
Sure.
Number one, they're pressured up. You need to relieve the pressure. Mm-hmm. So you need to haul water as long as it takes to some other facility to relieve the pressure. Well, they haven't done that piece. They've shut them down, most of them, I think. But the purge is still ongoing, and it is something that's going to bite us.
How many barrels a day?
I don't know what it is.
I'm just curious.
I don't know either.
But I think that's a good advocacy to show that, like you were talking about, we've lost life, we've had our spills, but that we're willing to make up for it. We're trying to do the right thing, and we see the problem.
More than willing, we are fully committed to finding solutions.
Fully committed, right. Absolutely. But I want it to be known here. That's what the show is about: is to shed that positive light of what our industry does.
I appreciate that, but I have to give the industry an F on the purge.
Yeah.
And,
it's been over a year now.
The commission has to do it, and for that to keep going on and not be stopped by now, it's been over a year.
Yeah. But I'm glad that people are hearing that F from you. That's good. I'm glad to hear that, and people are glad to hear that.
We've had friends go and testify in front of the Corporation Commission. I mean, there's a lot of ideas being thrown at it, and I don't know how many have been tried.
Well, I think that the companies that are well-meaning that are doing it have tried to come with solutions, but everybody is concerned, as they should be, with their bottom line. Yeah. And as we've had collapsing energy prices since 2014, that's 7 years of a depressed economy in the oil and gas business. It's really hard for companies for the minor people that are working at that level to report up to the company and up to the top that, hey, we're going to solve this problem. We're going to cost you $10 million in the process. Mm-hmm. That narrative, that dog don't hunt. So that's the problem they've got. It's a legitimate problem of cost versus doing the right thing.
Agreed.
Well, you say about costs and future. I mean, what do you think's going to happen to our industry? You were very positive the other day that we're going to be around a long time.
I am very positive about it, but it's kind of a contrarian viewpoint. I believe it's smart for us to have good regulation.
Yes.
It needs to be better in regulation. Oklahoma, and it needs
sustained growth.
That's right.
And in a sustainable way for the environment.
One of the first concepts I learned in business, and I probably got it in class somewhere, I think it was a Peter Drucker concept of long-term profit maximization. Mm-hmm. That's what we ought to adopt, not the short-term. The private equity funded groups, they're in it to make money, build up assets for 5 years and sell out. Mm-hmm. So they don't care. Mm-hmm. We're generational. I'm third generation, my son's fourth. And most everybody on the OEPA board is a generational producer. We're not going anywhere. We're going
local Oklahoma people that have wells and interest here.
And we live in the communities, so we care.
Yeah.
We really care about teachers. We really care about the environment. We have to. Yeah. And it's in our interest to care. And so since we're long-term, we want to see these problems solved so that in the long term, we don't end up with them. Because we're not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. We're going to end up with these problems, whether we want them or not. And so I think, by and large, the Corporation Commission does a pretty good job. The purge has been a tough one, and I don't see anything on the horizon to fix it. It will eventually die down. If they quit injecting water, we'll quit having a problem. And the best solution to clean up anything is to just quit doing it. Mm-hmm. Quit doing it, and nature will take care of cleanup.
Clean the water on the surface that we gather and utilize it for crops, something like that.
Utilize it for good.
Yeah. when I was one of the last things I talked to Continental about was NPDES permitting. And I thought, I'd been out of there for a while, and I thought that was a unique idea they'd be all for. Well, they're already working on it.
Can you tell me, I don't think you said what that acronym is.
It's National Pollution Elimination Discharge Systems.
Okay.
And what it does, and it's smart, it's good for the environment, and it's counterintuitive. But you clean the water up, and the law is that when you can use it, it hadn't happened, I think it's east of the Mississippi, west of the Mississippi River, I think it's harder to do. But you clean it up to background standards. Like if the Cimarron River is 5,000 parts per million chlorides or total dissolved solids, you clean your water up to that, and then you can put it in the Cimarron River, put it back in the ecosystem. That only smart to me. But the late great Senator Robert S. Kerr used to say, while you're explaining, your opponent's gaining. So the difficulty with that is explaining why you're putting produced water.
Well, Mike, how would your son do with that? If he had that added cost of cleaning that water, right? He's running stripper wells.
Yeah, he couldn't do it.
Yeah, and so
The cost is just astounding to clean it up.
it's unfortunate.
As of right now.
The technology is getting better every day.
Yeah.
I've stumbled upon something that is really cool about how they're going to evaporate.
Well, I was doing some consulting work for a company in Dallas that had this. They all have the solution.
Yeah, it's all,
And I said, well, number one, you don't have the solution. There are 50 companies with the solution. The cost is the line of defense. You have to be able to do it at a cost that's close to what it's costing companies now.
There was a guy, Tom Robbins, a friend of ours. He's sat on many boards here in Oklahoma, and he was talking about how he went down to the state capitol, and one of the leaders was in there, and he was like, "Hey, come on in. We got this, idea about this, how to clean up the water." And he's like, "Matt, I got in that meeting, and there was a guy talking about how he had created this technology in his bathtub in his room, and it could clean up water." And that, he was just like, "Man, there's just people all over the map with this idea."
Yeah. The difference is they can all make it if they can make it work. Well, ironically, it ain't going to work in Oklahoma because you're never going to impose on anybody an additional cost through either our legislature or our corporation commission. New Mexico, different subject. It would probably work there because they
California. Which they've done a good job on that too. They have a system they're using sunlight and UV rays.
California doesn't do anything right.
They're putting it on
one funny story about California.
But they're putting it on the crops. But they're trying. They're trying.
And I will say it's viable here too. The price point has come down. To say it never will, it will. So right now, the average trucking price is probably to truck and dispose is, I would say, $1.50 a barrel. And if you're already plumbed in, you're about 50 cents plus or minus 10 cents.
That's it. We don't need trucking. We need just like we need pipelines for our produced water.
Well, I don't think we can keep injecting it at the current rate, especially if we get it upturned. So we have to figure out something to do it more viable. Then really, I'd go after the trucked water first because that's the low hanging fruit. You got to get the cost down to
what these guys were doing that I was working with was they were actually cleaning the water on the fly. From the flow back after a frac job. And they would actually clean it, and you could send it to a facility to hold it and use it again. And they'll clean it to whatever. You want drinking water? They can do that. It costs more money. But they said they could clean that water to be used again or to be discharged for about 60, 70 cents a barrel. Well, when I put them with companies to work with them, that never really worked. Never really happened.
Was it not that? Yeah, okay.
The cost was some way not what they said it was. And then, there's a lot of unforeseen costs in our business that you just have to be in it to know about.
Right.
So, I probably, I love that idea. Someday it's going to work. Someday we're going to be forced to do it.
That's what I was going to ask. So
and you could do that government funding to be able to help with that too.
Yeah, maybe like, hey, you know what? You guys already do the cleanup on with the OERB, right? So maybe the OERB steps in, and now it's not just plugging wells. It's also now we can also fix the water.
No, the OERB doesn't have the authority to plug wells.
No.
It solely rests with the corporation commission. So they don't even deal with that unless the commission.
But there's a fund from them.
There has been special projects where OERB, on an emergency basis, help the commission plug wells.
Nice.
And so I don't think anybody's going to raise hell about that.
No.
That's what we need to be doing. We just need a stronger orphan well program where we've got more money.
It just seems like we already have the funding. We already have the groups and the organizations here already that can do all of the things we're asking to do. We just need to, add another committee to one of these.
I think it's the appetite.
That's the issue.
I think we all have the appetite at this point, though.
Yeah.
I'm tired of the narrative being.
As long as it doesn't cost us more money.
It's right. No more cost. Right. But if they want to do a government funding thing for that particular water cleanup,
it's costing us money and not being able to go out and do our business.
Yeah, the problem is that the checks in the mail, I'll respect you in the morning, and I'm from the government. I'm here to help you. Third biggest lie, you know. So we have a natural born cynicism of anything government.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's just a reality that we're going to have to deal with government, and we've learned to do that better through the years, and we're going to have to even learn to do it better, I think, as we take off into the future.
Well, what's your story about California?
Yeah, I was
Tell
I
me
put
a
a
story about
fundraiser together
California.
for Domestic Energy Producers Alliance that Harold Hamm is the chairman of, and it's a nationwide group in California and Monterey. And it was for Kevin Cramer, who's the minority leader of the U.S. House. He'd be the Speaker of the House if Republicans control it. Anyway, Kevin's a great supporter of the industry. He's from Bakersfield, where he likes to say we have more oil than Oklahoma.
Right.
Which is not really true now, but it was at the time he said it. And anyway, put that together, and so we're doing question and answering, get around. One guy particularly said, well, Senator, I've lived in California my entire life. I'm third generation Californian. And he said, the name of my company is ABC Oil and Gas. And that stands for anywhere but California. So we don't want to emulate what they've done.
There you go.
It's a tough place. And most of the producers I know in California produce in other states.
When you, just going back to some of the things I've heard you say, what are some of the things we need to do as you're a good leader for our industry, and somebody that I rely on as a guide. So what are some of the things? What are your moral issues, if you will, with guys like us in our industry? Like, how do we move forward? You had a list.
Well.
Principles, if you will. Yeah,
principles. We should never do anything that's not good for our state. That ought to be a bedrock principle of any oil and gas group or company, in my opinion. We shouldn't try to get by with something that's not good for our state just because we're allowed to. So we need to be principle-centered leadership is what we really need in our industry. And I think we have a great deal of that already. And we will. It's kind of like Winston Churchill said about the American Congress. They'll do the right thing only after exhausting all of the other possibilities. And so that's the oil and gas industry. We'll do the right thing only after exhausting all of the possibilities sometimes. So I think we have to be principle-centered in our approach. We have to be realistic. We have to have policymakers that work with us. It's not us and them. It's got to be all of us. And those are the two main things I think of.
Mike, so what do you think about renewables? I read an article in the Daily Oklahoman this morning and said, 42% of electricity made in Oklahoma is by windmills.
We're a leader
last year. Yeah,
Oklahoma
we're number 3. We're number 3 as of last year in electricity production. I'm pretty sure we're selling a lot of that electricity to other states. It may be produced here. We're not exactly enjoying it.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Other states are enjoying our subsidy of wind.
Yeah, our cheap energy.
Jeremiah asked about renewable resources on this show because he knows it gets underneath my skin. It's like the lightning rod of this room. Every single time he does it, he knows that I'm just going to be like,
I'm with you. We cannot deny that we're going to move toward alternative sources. Right now, there are no alternatives. They're merely supplements.
Right. That's a good way to put it.
Electric cars, that's touted as the big thing. Well,
they're pieces
2% of the market is electric cars. If we double that to 4%, it's still 4%.
Right.
So it's not a short-term answer. And I think Obama, basically to his credit, set us on the path, if you look at it this way, of thinking about the future, that we've got to be working on it now. I think he wanted, like Biden does, to do it all at once. That ain't going to work.
Yeah.
It's going to fail miserably. He's going to not get reelected. He's going to cost his party the midterm elections if they continue to try to force change on the public.
Yeah,
Public's not going to pay $5 a gallon for gasoline and then reelect the guy that did that.
He's costing us our jobs and possibly our democracy at times, it feels like.
Well, let me clear up that. I think we need to be honest with our approach of things. He's not costing us jobs in Oklahoma. He's not. Shutting down drilling on federal lands. How does that hurt Oklahoma? We don't have any.
Yeah, that's great here.
Shutting down fracking on federal lands and offshore. That doesn't hurt Oklahoma. I'll tell you what helps Oklahoma is $69 a barrel, WTI, over 40 is about what it averaged in Trump's administration.
What about gas? What does that need to be at to really pick
gas
up? Gas
is up to $3. Gas is a different animal. We've got so much gas in the country.
It's too easy.
But what about here gas? Like, what does it cost? What does it need to be in Oklahoma to have Oklahoma thriving?
$4.25.
I can tell you that Marcellus can
numbers.
bring on a well at 50 million a day sustained. Right, we're not doing that here.
We're not doing this.
They're the same expense.
I know, but we're talking about like the bringing it out of the ground. I'm talking about what's it's up here on top. Like we as a state could put the infrastructure in to utilize our own gas right here and power towns.
It'd be
and
like
power each
value-added
other.
agriculture.
Yes.
You know, it's like agricultural folks in wherever Kellogg's is supporting Kellogg's being there.
Boom.
Because it's value added to their commodity product.
That's where our
And so
infrastructure
natural
lies.
gas would be the way to do that. And one of the things I've got to do before noon today is talk to a reporter about hydrogen, which I honestly, I don't know anything about anything, but I know somebody that does.
Yeah,
And so I
that's
was
a
on the
big
phone
topic.
yesterday with my friend Neil Goldstein in New York that has a hydrogen company. And so I got a little primer on hydrogen. Well, hydrogen, to do it realistically, requires a lot of natural gas.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be something that would work. Although he says it also has to be done in an area that has a lot of fleet trucks, because it's not going to be viable for individual cars for some time.
Yeah, it's going to be the solution of semis. Like Elon's going down a bad road with the batteries on semis. They're just too heavy.
Yeah.
The hydrogen's
They're not
better.
sustainable.
You get more
They're
power,
very
more
much
torque
is.
with the hydrogen.
Yeah.
Yeah, low
And-
end is great.
It's a lot easier to refill.
Yeah.
When you talk about narrative and all this, man, and it's so against fracking now, do you think it could happen to where they really do ban fracking?
No.
No, energy prices
Short
go through the
answer.
roof.
That's
Back on
what it's
hydrogen.
such a regressive tax. It will
Yeah.
make poor people even poorer.
But hydrogen,
Although no one talks about that part of it.
So we created a executive committee last month to explore hydrogen use, and
Who is we?
Oklahoma. Signed a law creating this committee for a 6-month review of the viability of putting a hydrogen plant in Oklahoma. He's got 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats on it, all from the House, I believe. And then they're getting energy or leaders from the industry as well to look at the viability of how can we bring hydrogen in for exactly what you're speaking about.
And I'll tell you, it's the same dilemma you face in a state like North Dakota. You know, they don't have enough refining capacity, so they have to take it out of state. You build refineries where the need is, not where the opportunity is. So you build refineries close to areas where they've got, major usage of gasoline and diesel, basically. So hydrogen has the same issue. A hydrogen plant here, you got to get the end product to somewhere where they have a fleet vehicles, a lot of fleet vehicles to make it worth doing. And I think we ought to try. I think it's a good road to explore. But I think what they're going to run into is the same dilemma North Dakota had with keeping, doing value added in their state with the oil and gas, because you just can't justify it. They've done a micro refinery or 2 in North Dakota. But you can't justify doing it financially with hydrogen, I don't think, in a small...
I have an idea on that, though, Mike. So we'll say right now, we're in the center of the United States. So unfortunately, we would have to look long, which is hard for politicians to do a lot. But if we said we can produce cheap energy, hydrogen with a mixture of natural gas to help with that, this is a great hub for
Central.
businesses to...
Well,
Absolutely.
you're the
go-
crossroads of the world right here.
Right. So,
People could put their trucking operations here.
yeah, that's what I...
well,
because when you say
yeah.
fleet vehicles, you're talking semis, I'd imagine, not smaller vehicles. Yeah, so...
Well, like Walmart, it would be a good example.
Amazon.
A company that can do it. Amazon, yeah.
But I think it would definitely build the infrastructure of Oklahoma as a whole. And if you build it, they will come, right? So that long term, if you've got it here, then people are like, well, the hub is here. Let's start moving operations here. Let's
Yeah.
move.
I would do it at the same time. I don't think long term is too long. You think about it at the same time. How do we incentivize the idea of having a lot of fleet trucks headquartered in Oklahoma? And we couple that with a program to use hydrogen. So you couple the two, and it'll work. Now, I'm not smart enough or haven't thought it through enough to know how you would do that. You probably have.
In my head, it all needs to be LNG, and make it safe. I mean, really, we have the infrastructure here to produce our own LNG plants.
Well, the difference is LNG still has NOx emissions. We still have emissions
Pretty low.
that the environmentalists don't want us to have.
They're wrong.
Hydrogen has 0.
Oh, really?
Well,
Wow.
yeah, but the creation of it has quite a bit.
There you have it.
You still got natural
There's
gas.
always
and
a
some
cost,
energy
everybody.
source to
correct.
get it going. So there is a cost.
But the cost is about 1 out of 4. I think it's 25%.
yeah,
less.
it's just like electric vehicles. Using natural gas is way more efficient to charge them than to run a vehicle off of it, unfortunately. But so you do have emissions, but it's scaled significally down, by using
Yes.
its products.
Yes.
So you stay pretty active with the OERB, and what are they building right now? What are they building toward?
Actually, I'm not active with the OERB right now. I
I saw him at the. I just saw him at the. I just figured you were pressing palms the other day at the soiree. So I was hoping you might know every single person there. How many members does the what is it? The Oklahoma Energy Producers Alliance.
We have 530 members.
530
all across
members.
Oklahoma. The Oklahoma Energy Resources Board is doing what they've always done. So we're in total support of their program and what they're doing. And, we're not, we have one board member that I think we got on the OERB that Speaker McCall appointed. And we won't go into all that. But that's okay. They're doing the right thing anyway. As long as they're doing the right thing, I don't care who's doing it.
Yeah.
And they seem to be doing the right thing to me. Now, I would be looking at what we're doing on the environment. I'd never lose that thing. And hopefully we don't lose sight of that at the OERB, because that's our mechanism. That's our voice to the rest of the public, is the OERB.
And what about the OEPA? Like, what do you think they're building toward? Besides, like, hey, okay, we're super worried about fracking right now, but how many people in the OEPA, like, are they still out drilling vertical wells?
Yeah,
how many vertical wells are being drilled in Oklahoma each year?
Well, I know Mac Energy is going to drill 40 this year.
Yeah.
They're putting in a water flood in the Valmalma field, I believe.
Yeah.
And they're going to put in 40, they're going to drill 40 wells. I know Lance Jones is on our board in Duncan. They're a larger, small independent. And they, too, are drilling wells ongoing. And, Bill Dost is one of our board members from Edmond. And he'll drill 10 or 12 wells a year. So we still drill. Now, we don't drill to the extent the horizontal guys do. And the big difference is that when we drill a well, it's much more economical, because we can drill a dry hole and it's cheaper than what they have to do is spend $6-8 million, drill it horizontally, frack it before they know.
No matter what. No, they'll look at the logs. They frack regardless.
Yeah.
I've got the funniest story on that. What you just said about dry holes. So I worked at Nomac Drilling before on the rig contracting side. Before I came here, I had a stint to start up another company in between. But anyway, that one didn't work. But I started here. I was renting an office, and they said, "Why don't you just come to work for Trace?" And I said, "All right." And I did. And I'm looking at it, AFE. And I'm like, "What does this dry hole cost?" Because I'd only been a part of horizontals. There's no such thing as a dry hole cost. We drill the whole thing no matter what, and we're fracking them all. But dry hole cost is a beautiful thing for a vertical producer. They look at it. They spend $230,000 to drill down. They run a log or two. If they like what they see, they frack it. If not, they don't set cases.
Plug it. Don't chase good money after bad.
There it is. So
I nothing wrong with a good, clean, dry hole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Well, I'm going to, if any time you're in the city, you're a welcome guest host or a guest, either one.
I appreciate
you always have a seat at this table, buddy. Your insights and wisdom and just leadership. I'm a follower now and a fan.
Yeah, I just found you, Matt videotaped your last speaking arrangement. I thought you were excellent. So there's certainly a lot of wisdom.
So plug your book again.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the book is merely a labor of trying to get what I think I've learned down for anybody that might use it. And so it's not a typical self-help book at all. It's got a chapter on parenting, and it's got some philosophy in it, and it's got some ethical things in it.
I think each of your chapters could be its own book, by the way.
It could be. Each chapter could be a book.
So you have some writing to finish up before.
I do.
I do have before we zip off here, so we added a new industry within the last 2 years to Oklahoma. It's taken up a lot of grass out, or a lot of ground out there. So at what point do we say, okay, marijuana is bringing in quite a bit of money, quite a bit of revenue to the state? I actually took down some statistics: $345 million in sales last year, revenue, $71.6 million in taxes. When do these other industries start supplementing? So oil isn't the bad guy that we always have to chase down. We start maybe evaluating GPT again, maybe not, but
instead of carrying 35% of the state.
Like, what are your thoughts on that, Mike? Is that
Well,
Do you look for other industries that build up here to tax instead of us?
I don't think that you're going to do anything with marijuana that they don't want, because politically, the public was very favorable. They passed an initiative petition.
Yeah, they had to
do it. So I think the
went to
legislature, which is dominantly Republican, and I would say dominantly really opposed personally. To marijuana.
I am personally opposed to marijuana.
Our entire congressional delegation is probably opposed to it.
Yeah.
I know our two senators.
Well, yeah, they didn't pass it, right?
Yeah.
They had to go to a petition.
And that was
for
only
reason.
and I think the effort in Congress is now on getting it to where banking can at least use a credit card or some kind of system.
So that cash isn't leaving Oklahoma. That's a scary thought to me, how much money leaves our state because of
They
that.
could put it in credit unions, though, right? Or what do they have to do with that money right now?
Somebody told me they were taking it in
truck
cash.
to the Treasury.
That's
and
right.
they've had to build facilities to hold it all, and it's a big problem.
Terrifying.
That's another client I worked for, was a guy that had a system that would take care of it from seed to sale, remit the taxes fairly, have a way to do it. It was a great system, and the tax commission agreed to take token, basically, which would be a credit card, in exchange for cash, and agreed that they could do that. But for some reason or another, we've just never gotten it all the way through the process to get it to the end user to use. And they're still not doing it, in my opinion, or what I understand, very well.
Well, we're learning. I believe we're trying to emulate a couple of the other states that have done a pretty good job, such as Colorado and.
Have they done a good job? Have you?
Seed to sale. We implemented. I believe they just passed something for seed to sale in this last session, but they're trying to figure it out how to track it because there's actually a lot of black market for marijuana leaving the state.
I'm just behind the times. There's a lot of things I'm being forced to accept. This environmental stuff, the weed stuff. Like, man, Mike, Jeremiah, you bring up things in here that just like get me under my skin, and I'm just forced to deal with it now.
25 years ago, I flew my twin-engine plane into Idabel, Oklahoma to see a football game, and I was met by the police when I got there, and they searched the plane. They searched me, and they said, "You got to understand, this is the marijuana season." 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. Number one cash crop in Oklahoma was marijuana 25 years ago.
I didn't know.
It was just all black market. It's just all. And so they said, that's the problem. We have people fly in here and get it. And
maybe
fly
my
out.
uncles.
So they gave me a police
Allegedly.
escort to the game and back to my plane. And, I stayed for a halftime, and I said, I think I want to leave.
They never found it.
Wow.
They never found your weed.
You better hide it.
I'd have been in big
He was
trouble.
better hiding.
I would have known. I would have had a clue planning.
You dumped the bags.
Where did you
before
put that
later.
anyway?
Wow. And then now look at us today.
How can people get a hold of you after the show and reach out to you and ask you for all your advice or come to speak to them?
Wisdom is wisdom.
Well, I appreciate that.
How do they get hold of you?
Wisdom is knowing other people that have it and suggesting you talk to them. But
Suggest you talk to him.
my cell phone number is I give it out. It's
You're a brave man.
206-4444. Pretty
All right.
easy.
Someone get that guy an extended warranty on his house,
Yeah.
his appliances, and all of his cars, and his airplane.
Which I have not. I don't have an airplane anymore.
No, you got rid of it.
Are you on all the media platforms? You have a website for your
I have
book?
a website. My website for my consulting company is
There we go.
Pivotal Solutions.
Pivotal Solutions. Okay.
Yeah. And so Pivotal Strategic Solutions.
And what are you guys doing over there?
Well, we're just trying to build a consulting business around speaking engagements and around the book and around either consulting in the energy. What I really love to do is consult on public affairs, solve problems. Like I mentioned, the two clients I had, they don't pay, because I did it on the come. I did it basically think, well, if it works, then I'll get something out of it. And so I love these ideas that solve problems. The water solutions group I worked with solves problems.
Yeah.
And so that's what I try to do. And it's not a very smart business model, frankly, but it's what I enjoy doing is helping people solve problems that they say can't be solved because everything can be solved.
So are you? Is it a lobbyist group? Are you guys registered?
No,
lobbyists?
we don't lobby.
Okay.
I've never lobbied. I've always been a political strategist, basically, and I hire the right lobbyists for people when they need lobbying.
Your degree
But I
was in
have-
philosophy, right?
in psychology.
Psychology. That's interesting. I like that.
And I hire the people I need to do whatever the specific thing they need to do is. Like I work with Jeff Cloud, former corporation commissioner, a lot, and Jeff is also an attorney and a landman. So we've got several projects that we've worked on together. And so I bring in the people that they need, but what they need, they don't need to just go hire a lobbyist. They need a strategic approach that has a well planned out method of success. And so that starts at one end and stops at the other. There's a whole lot of things in between, not all of which I do.
Man, this guy has become from the young man turning a wrench to now a seasoned professional turning minds into something a little bit better.
I've got so many. I can sit down with you for hours.
Yeah, so please.
Well, I didn't even
gotta
get to
do
talk
this
about
quarterly.
my next book is going to be stories from the oil patch.
Yes.
Everything I needed to know I learned from a roughneck.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so I've got stories out. I thought that's what you were going to talk about today.
I want to talk about I'm never going to run out of questions for you, so you're going to have to
okay.
stick around another, what are you, 50 now?
I'm not sure I've got the
Okay,
answer.
don't
but
tell
I've
us.
never been tempted to give one.
Well,
Yeah.
Mike, God bless you. Thank you for coming in,
thanks,
guys.
guys.
This is our show, The Talking Energy Show. Go to talkingenergyshow.com. Please reach out to Mike, Jeremiah, Ken Lavin, and myself. And thank you,
Wait,
guys.
one more thing. We're on
Look at
all
this
the
guy.
platforms for
Every
Apple and Google. So the podcasts are on there, the Talking Energy Show.
If you go to talkingenergyshow.com, you can find it. And the calendar for all the oil and gas events in Oklahoma. So there's lots of things
and
to
the tailgate,
find.
Matt is the face of oil field. in
Oh,
Oklahoma.
gosh. I'm so sorry,
that's
everybody. That's it,
great.
everybody.
Have a good one.
Take care. God bless. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Goodbye.